try to attach the T word and attach the Israelites to something that they're clearly not a part of. All right? And that would be because in rounding a little bit over the 15-minute mark, they tell you that, they try to make that connection between the Hebrew Israelites and BLM. There is no connection. That is a white lie, for lack of a better term.
CIA and FBI are monitoring Black Israelites right now. 1.
So remember, Black, dirty, untrustworthy, murderous, filthy, sad, violent. All those words that connected to the word Black, when it's just simply Hebrew Israelites.
On shocking discovery, U.S. intelligence agencies are watching Black Israelites. The revelation that U.S. intelligence...
Now, we could have told you that, the way that they should cut and come against our videos. They don't come against KKK and Nazi and national and white nationalist videos. They're still up.
Agencies, particularly the CIA and FBI, have placed the Black Israelite movement under intense surveillance, has ignited widespread debate and speculation, raising profound questions about the nature of state power, historical narratives, and the limits of religious and civil liberties. According to Iranian intelligence sources, American authorities perceive the movement as a potential destabilizing force, justifying covert monitoring and infiltration. This assertion invites...
Esau has always been afraid of Jacob raising up. They've always been afraid and don't want Israelites to have any sort of autonomous wealth or period. And they did that when they did all the drowned towns, when they burned down all the towns and settlements that so-called Black people have built up here in America, where they were actually living better than many white communities, with their own schools, own banks, own movie theaters, own grocery stores, etc. And what did Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, do? They went into all those towns and they burned them to the ground. Rape, robbed, murdered, took over the properties. So that means the judges, the law, everybody was involved in it. The people who lost their land and their properties never got it back. Point blank period. Then they got drowned towns. I think it's like 14 or 15 of them, where they just flooded them out, opened dams up, and flooded out the towns. And built houses on the lakes that were created around these drowned towns. And the buildings and the graves and the tombstones of the Black people that lived there, so-called, the Israelites that lived there, are still under that water.
Deeper reflection on the motivations behind such scrutiny, the extent of governmental intervention, and the broader philosophical implications of knowledge, control, and state authority. While Iran's claim may be shaped by its own geopolitical agenda, the mere suggestion that a religious community rooted in Black identity and biblical heritage is being...
Remember, we don't acknowledge the Black identity. We're not Black. There's no such thing as Black people. They made that shit up. That's why I keep saying it and keep pushing it over and over again. It's a tactic. Isaiah. So, biblical stories, we don't need your fucking help. All right? We already know the CIA and the FBI is watching us. That's obvious. Even when we're out on the streets teaching, we used to say FBI surveillance on all our phones when we were teaching. We'd all see the Wi-Fi. This is Isaiah 29 and 15. And it reads, "Warn to them that seek deep to hide their counsel from Yahweh, and their works are in the dark. And they say, who seeth us? And who knoweth us?" All right? So we know that these unrighteous alphabet ran by, the small hats and by Edomites are trying to shape a narrative to attack us, because they're going to turn this. And even though they kind of admit that we've been wronged as a people, but they don't care, because they've established this unrighteous kingdom and this unrighteous rulership, and they're going to do whatever's necessary to try and keep it. So to hell what's right, to hell with giving you any justice, any reparations, any type of autonomous way of living. It's not going to happen, not on their watch. are Esau, the enemy of Jacob, the Edomites. We are the Hebrew Israelites. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Jacob? So am I.
Being watched so closely by the U.S. government rekindles long-standing concerns about surveillance, racial politics, and the mechanisms through which dominant powers seek to regulate historical discourse.
Right, so look at that historical discourse from the 1960s all the way up to now. You know, the Jim Crow laws, it got worse after slavery. Because during slavery, you know, they were still murdering us and literally eating us. Go look into the book, the Delectable Negro. All right, but we had value to them. You know, once we got free, or not really free, but once we were free from the slave, from the natural slave masters, and got put into the hands of the government slave masters, we were able to move throughout the system, and we had all the know-how because you know the Southern Kingdom, for the most part, and the Northern Kingdom did all the work, so they knew how to build, how to farm, how irrigation. They knew how to build houses, build roofs. They knew how to do all that. And so they did that, and they built up their own towns here in America, separate from Edomites, and were doing better. Watch the movie Rosewood. Okay? That's a really good example. Then you had, you know, the famous Tulsa, Oklahoma. You had the famous Black Belt here in Chicago, which most people didn't even know about. Bronzeville was called the Black Belt. All right? And all those ginormous mansions and all those buildings, those were erected by and controlled by so-called black people. You still got a lot of some black people that own a lot of those buildings in that area, in the Bronzeville area to this day. And you know, and Edom has moved in there and you know and bought it up but they destroyed it in the that was destroyed in 1919 during the Red Summer, which means it was an orchestrated thing across America. And, you know, the FBI and the CIA didn't do anything about that. And like I said, the judges and the lawyers, the policemen, the sheriffs, everybody was involved. Because those people that lost their land, their property, and their lives, they were never able to go back into those neighborhoods and get their money out of the banks to get their properties back or any of that. Those properties that were still standing after those places were destroyed were confiscated and spread throughout so-called white citizens that now live in those houses and on homes and on those lands. Point blank period.
The Black Israelite movement has long occupied a space of fascination, controversy, and misrepresentation. At the core of its belief system is the assertion that African Americans, along with other people of color, are the true descendants of the biblical Israelites.
So they admit that there's other people of color. So why are you calling them black? And that is not only an assertion, it is absolutely 100% true. The history backs it up.
This claim challenges conventional Judeo-Christian teachings and Western historical narratives.
Which Judeo-Christian teaching and Western historical narratives are completely fabrications. They don't match up with scripture. They don't match up with history at all. We proved that 1,000 times over. 1,000 times over. As a matter of fact, let's let this little Edomite girl tell you, this young Edomite lady, break it all down. I decided to keep her in my receipts. Damn.
Beat, humiliated, mutilated, murdered, and cannibalized their slaves. Accurate history is teaching that George Washington's false teeth were made out of his slaves' teeth. Accurate history is teaching that Abraham Lincoln may have said some words and signed some shit, but he did not physically do anything to free the slaves. The white abolitionists also often get almost total credit for freeing the slaves. I bet you've never even asked yourself what the slaves were doing to free themselves, and the answer to that is most of the fucking work, including giving the ultimatum of war. But then we get a bunch of white people mad that their kids might feel guilty if we teach real history.
is a slur when they're actually brown in complexion. You can see even the images on the screen. This is an image of what Jerusalem looked like in the early 1900s, late 1800s. All right, I've seen the images in the ancient time. All right, but these people are brown. So remember that definition of black and how they push it. They push it and they push it. They even give you a Black History Month. All right, man, there's no such